Hello, everybody, and welcome, friends. Today, of course, is Saturday, and I hope everyone is having a happy, healthy, and productive Saturday. And I hope that you had a prosperous week. And if not, well, let's work on that. Of course, you are watching the Libertarian Hour here on The Kevin Lee Show, and I am your host, Kevin. Now, for those of you who do not know what the Libertarian Hour is all about, essentially, it's about all things libertarian. It's about my perspective on libertarianism. I'll bring others on with their perspective on libertarianism. We'll go over party platforms. We'll potentially meet candidates. We'll find out what it means to get involved, how you can support the party, and hopefully have some Q&A sessions with you, the viewers, on answering your questions in case you are interested in diving in deeper into what it means to be libertarian. So I'm glad you're here. Today, as promised, I have decided we are going to talk about the Libertarian Party and their platform. But before we do that, let me get some business out of the way here and, of course, throw my name on. My name is Kevin, and you are, of course, watching the Libertarian Hour. Sorry, my watch is going crazy. And we air every Saturday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Of course, you can always watch us in replay on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, you name it. We are on every platform that I can possibly find. We are on, obviously, all that I just mentioned. We're also on Parler. We're on Float. We will soon actually be streaming to Float directly, probably within the next week or two, something like that. So yeah, there's that. So if you are on Float, it's just, I'm not even exactly sure how to explain it, but it's a new or newer, I guess I would say, platform like a Parler. But they kind of emphasize more on streaming, and because of that, I want to stream directly to them. That being said, we only have an hour today, and I don't want to spend a lot of it with me just talking. So I'm going to hop right on over to the website for the Libertarian Party. It's actually lp.org. Can't get much more simple than that, lp.org. And on here, you're going to notice it takes you right to the main page. There's all the information that you want to see about libertarianism right here. It's going to talk about how to get involved, how to buy products for them, how to join the LP, how to donate. It's going to have articles and features and annual reports. And I mean, they're pretty transparent when it comes to, for a political party, at least, right up at. It'll talk about the presidential ticket and election results. It'll have every link you can imagine down here. So yeah, if you are interested in the Libertarian Party, I highly recommend checking out their website. For today's purposes, we are actually going to come over here to where it says Libertarian Party, click on it. And again, second panel down will say platform. We'll hit learn more. Bam. See how easy it is to get to the platform? They don't really hide anything. They put everything right out there as plain as day to try to get you to get the information that you're searching for, right? But you couldn't ask more from a political party, in my opinion. It'll show here that excuse me, that this platform was adopted by convention in July of 2018. So this is about 2 years old, but they still, and they are, of course, always working on making minor tweaks. And I would imagine either in 2020 or 2021, 2022, there will be a platform that will be newer, but will still look very much like this one. That being said, there are some sections in here. I think there's 6 in total. We have the preamble. We have the statement of principles. We have the personal liability, which we'll go over in greater detail. We have the economic liberty, which of course we'll go over in great detail. Then we jump all the way down here to securing liberty. And then finally, omissions. Excuse me. So I could read all this verbatim, and I want you to hear it verbatim. I don't want you to just take my interpretation or my paraphrasing of it. So we are going to read it, but because I do not feel like I can read this whole thing right now, especially with the way my throat is feeling, I need more coffee. I've decided that we will have a narrator today, and that narrator's name is Mark. You might have heard of him before, but it take me a second to set him up, so I will be right back. Okay, so hopefully this goes well. I haven't tried using this before, but we'll see what happens, eh? Uh-oh. It's not working. Why not? It was just working a second ago. Hold on. Here, let's try this.
Platform Libertarian Party, tab content shared, Google Chrome. Platform Libertarian Party, Libertarian Party, Libertarian Party, Libertarian Party get involved shop join donate. Search stay in. As libertarians, we seek a world of liberty, a world in which all individuals are sovereign over their own lives and are not forced to sacrifice their values for the benefit of others. We believe that respect for individual rights is the essential precondition for a free and prosperous world, that force and fraud must be banished from human relationships, and that only through freedom can peace and prosperity be realized. Consequently, we defend each person's right to engage in any activity that is peaceful and honest, and welcome the diversity that freedom brings. The world we seek to build is one where individuals are free to follow their own dreams in their own ways, without interference from government or any authoritarian power. In the following pages we set forth our basic principles and enumerate various policy stands derived from those principles. These specific policies are not our goal, however. Our goal is nothing more nor less than a world set free in our lifetime, and it is to this end that we take these stands.
Okay, so that was the preamble. And I suggest that you possibly, if you can, read along on screen with what the preamble is saying, right? Yeah, because that'll make it easier for everything. And again, you can print out the PDF and take it with you as a, and I don't know if I actually even talked about that. Right here, it has an option to download the PDF, which is everything you see here on the screen. I recommend if you're interested or you are already a supporter of the LP, that you should go ahead and print this up and read it on your own. But that was the preamble. Now we're going to go into the statement of principles. Hopefully this one plays nicer. Let's see.
We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual.
Now, did you hear that? It says, we, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. Now, that isn't a bold statement. I tell you, brothers and sisters, I don't know what is. That's amazing. In fact, I'm going to have it read it again and we'll just go from there. Uh-oh, what happened? I don't know what happened. It locked up, man. Hold on.
Platform Libertarian. Selected.
I have no idea what's happening here. I apologize. I have no idea what's going on. Let's try this. Huh. Let me turn this off for 1 second.
Exiting narrator.
All right, let's try this again.
Starting narrator. Platform Libertarian Party, tab content shared, Google Chrome. Platform Libertarian Party, tab content shared, Google Chrome. Platform Libertarian Party.
Seriously, what is this thing doing? I'm going to have to find out a different way to do this. I apologize, everyone. Not sure why it's doing that.
Exiting narrator. Starting narrator. Platform Libertarian Party, tab content shared, Google.
Okay, so it's this little thing. Let's see if it'll let me
We selected.
try it now.
Platform Libertarian Party, tab content shared, Google Chrome. Platform Libertarian. We, the members of the Libertarian Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend the rights of the individual. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives, and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever manner they choose. Governments throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. Even within the United States, all political parties other than our own grant to government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things, and hold that where governments exist, they must not violate the rights of any individual, namely, 1. The right to life. Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others. 2. The right to liberty of speech and action. Accordingly, we oppose all attempts by government to abridge the freedom of speech and press, as well as government censorship in any form. And 3. The right to property. Accordingly, we oppose all government interference with private property, such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support the prohibition of robbery, trespass, fraud, and misrepresentation. Since governments, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by government in the areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. People should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefit of others. They should be left free by government to deal with one another as free traders, and the resultant economic system, the only one compatible with the protection of individual rights, is the free market.
Okay, so I know that was a mouthful. There was a lot there, and I don't want to go over it all again, but there are a couple things I do want to bring up, and right here is going to be...
Opening parenthesis selected.
My bad. Okay, let's turn that off. So, we have 3 points that were made here. We have the right to life. We have, that's number 1. Number 2, the right to liberty of speech and action. And number 3, the right to property. These are huge principles in libertarianism. Now, again, you might already be a libertarian, or at least a libertarian leaning, or have interest or have done research in it, and this may not be new for you, but it might be new to some people. But the right to life, the right to liberty of speech and action, and the right to property are key, base foundation of everything that is that we believe in. Now, this can also be kind of a stick in the spokes, if you will, to some people. They feel like it's going to mess up the ride. It's going to trip everything up because we're focused so much on our individualism, our individual rights, our right to property, our right to prosperity, our right to earn, our right to keep, and that we believe that things should be done in a voluntary aspect, that the government should not be interfering with private contractual things. And there could be an argument made to that to some extent. Now, that's not saying that the government can't have any say or there shouldn't be any regulation. That's not what the Libertarian Party believes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are people within the party who believe that the government shouldn't even exist. I get that. That's not your average libertarian. It's just not. I think most libertarians are willing to concede certain things, and we will kind of go over that a little bit, just a touch today. Greater detail later. Because there are great divides within the Libertarian Party. There are libertarians, as we played last week, like Penn Jillette, who will automatically say, you know, people say, well, what about schools? What about fire and police? What about roads? And he said, I'll give you schools. I'll give you roads. I'll give you fire and police. Now, there are many libertarians who are absolutely 100% against that and say, absolutely not. I happen to be more in the Penn Jillette area because I'd much rather get libertarians in office, get libertarians positions of power, where we can start limiting things and then seeing what works and what doesn't work and how to fix things and make government smaller and smaller and smaller. We're not going to go from day one. Say a miracle occurred. And let's say our candidate this year, Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, won. And we became president and vice president of the country. And let's say we somehow took over control of the Senate and control of Congress all this year. We're not going to magically cut government by 70% in a day, in a week, in a month, and even in a term, not even in a decade probably. It would take a long time to get to where we want to be at because we're not foolish. We're not going to cut off our nose to spite our face. We're not, though there are people who can be a little bit rash and irrational in the Libertarian Party because, you know, we are a bunch of free thinkers. Collectively, I think we are level-headed enough to know that we can't do that, right? So this is an important thing to keep in mind. Yes, there are extreme elements in the Libertarian Party when it comes to no government interference. But I would have to say that the average level-headed libertarian understands that we have a vision of where we want to be. We have a point we're at now in government. We can see where we want to be down the road, and we know that it's a gradual road to get there. It's not a big hill. It's not a huge dive. It's going to be a ride. And this will have to start by getting people elected on the local level, because let's face it. Most politics involved are local. Like right now is a perfect example. Right now we have people freaking out about the coronavirus. And I know I don't want to bring up the coronavirus every single time, but it's kind of on the news. It's kind of everywhere, right? We need to understand that everyone's looking to the president to do all these things. Well, the president can't do all these things because his power, or the power of the president, only goes so far. In fact, most of this stuff falls into the level of the state, sometimes in the level of the cities or the counties. And they're the ones who actually have to make the decisions and enforce rules. You know, Trump can yell and scream all he wants about having people go back to school, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to each governor. It's up to each mayor. You know, it's up to each school district. I mean, I live in Illinois, and where I live, in my school district, we were allowed to be given a choice to either send our kids back to school full time with basically wearing masks for the majority of the day, except for when they're eating and when they're at recess, or they can do distance learning like they were for the whole, last few months of school. My kids did a terrible job with being at home learning that way. They were miserable. I mean, yeah, they were miserable. Let's not try to downplay it. They were miserable. In fact, my son had come to a point where he was literally refusing to do school anymore. I can't imagine he would adjust well and do a whole year that way. So we opted to send our kids back to school. Now, again, we have to choose for our kids, our family. It's not like we're voting on what we want the school to do. We're telling the school this is what we want to do. So they're going to try to allocate for our kids to go to school while doing distance learning for other kids. There are other districts right next door to me who are absolutely not having anybody back in person. And that's just, literally. I mean, I'm talking people I'm quote unquote neighbors with, people who live close to me will not be going back to school, even though I can send back my kids full time. So you see, it's local politics matter because depending upon who you elect as your mayors and on your councils or your aldermen or your county boards or your state, on the state level, may it be, state representatives and state senators or your governor. These are the people who make the decisions that are going to most affect you. So when we talk about libertarianism growing, we're not talking about winning the White House, which would be amazing, but we're talking about getting people elected locally. We don't need tens or hundreds. We need thousands and tens of thousands to get elected across the board. Now that number might seem huge to you, but you have to realize that there are people, or states, I should say, that have between local, city, county, state levels that have literally tens of thousands of positions that are elected. And we have 50 states, keep in mind. There are lots of positions for people to be able to go out and get elected to as libertarians. So if you're a libertarian, I don't even care if you're 20 years old. You should really contemplate thinking about what we can do collectively to move forward. Yeah, it's important in my mind that we need to keep doing these things and moving forward on a local level. But we are already at 20 minutes and we have lots of reading to do. So let's continue. So the next section we're going to talk about is we have essentially 4 pillars. And really it's 3 pillars: personal liberty, economic liberty, and securing liberty. Everything else falls under omissions. It says our silence about any other particular government law, regulation, ordinance, directive, edict, control, regulatory agency, activity, or is that machination? I don't even know. Should not be construed to imply approval. So basically saying that we can't cover everything in our platform. We have this idea that talk about these important things, but they can't all be covered in this. Like the Constitution, not everything can be covered in your state or federal constitution, right? So because of that, we have a situation here. Let's get back up to where we were. So here, for section 1, personal liability. Again, I think I'm going to have Mark try to read it, and if it doesn't work, then I'll just read it myself. So hold on one second. I'm going to turn on my narrator, and we'll be right back.
Content shared. Can.
All right, so let's keep our fingers crossed and hope this actually works, huh?
Individuals selected. Platform Libertarian Party, tab. Platform Libertarian.
For some reason, it's just not working. And I have no idea why, and it's really upsetting me
Exiting narrator.
because I went ahead and did this all personally, and it was fine.
Individuals selected. Scan.
All right, let's try it. Apparently, it's not going to work for us. So I'm going to have to read all of this. And I apologize because I am not in the mood for reading. So it's probably not going to turn out well.
Exiting narrator.
All right. That's funny. I tested all this beforehand and it worked flawlessly. And now I'm going live. And of course, nothing works. What are you going to do? Live and learn. So libertarian or personal liberty. And again, I don't have my reading classes on, so this should be interesting. Individuals are inherently free to make choices for themselves and must accept responsibility for the consequences of the choices they make. Our support for an individual's right to make choices in life does not mean that we necessarily approve or disapprove of those choices. No individual, group, or government may rightly initiate force against any other individual, group, or government. Libertarians reject the notion that groups have inherent rights. We support the rights of the smallest minority, the individual. So again, libertarianism is very much about individualism. Something to always keep in mind. So that is 1.0 of personal liberty. Now 1.1 is called self-ownership. Individuals own their bodies and have rights over them that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. Individuals have the freedom and responsibility to decide what they knowingly and voluntarily consume and what risks they accept to their own health, finances, safety, or life. 1.2 is expression and communication. It says we support full freedom of expression and oppose government censorship, regulation, or control of communications, media, and technology. We favor the freedom to engage in or abstain from any religious activities that do not violate the rights of others. We oppose government actions which either aid or attack any religion. Okay, keep that in mind. A lot of people will say, well, to be a libertarian, you're going to be an atheist. No, right there. It says it clear as day. You don't want to be involved with religion? Don't be. If you want to be involved with religion, that's A-okay. 1.3, privacy. Libertarians advocate individual privacy and government transparency. We are committed to ending government's practice of spying on everyone. We support the rights recognized by the Fourth Amendment to be secure in our persons, homes, property, and communications. Amen. Protection from unreasonable search and seizure should include records held by third parties, such as email, medical, and library records. Again, you think this would be common sense. You think that this would be the way that everyone is promoting government, but it's not. Not in the slightest bit. 1.4, personal relationships. Sexual orientation, preference, gender, or gender identity should have no impact on the government's treatment of individuals, such as in current marriage, child custody, adoption, immigration, or military service laws. Government does not have the authority to define, promote, license, or restrict personal relationships regardless of the number of participants. Interesting. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships until such time as the government stops its illegitimate practice of marriage licensing. Such licenses must be granted to all consenting adults who apply. Now that is actually huge. Something I've kind of talked about previously on other of these shows, as well as my other podcasts, where I believe government has no business being involved in the licensing of marriage. Again, I think it was last time, maybe even the first week, we talked a little bit very quickly about why the government is even involved in marriages. And it was basically because churches and organizations, mostly churches, were the one who were the official record keepers locally for marriages. The problem being is that if a couple, say, get married in Indiana and then they move to Colorado, they have no record or proof that they were married in Indiana because they were married in some small church or parish over in southwest Indiana. And, at the time there was no telephones or anything else, an easy way to be able to look up these records. So to keep things more centralized, counties started getting involved in record keeping, and then they could have central counties. So you could say, well, I got married in whatever county. And then they would go to that county and then ask, were these two people married on this date? And they say, yes, we have record of those people being married. And that's why they did it. Now, in theory, that sounds like a good idea. But like anything the government gets their little stingy, dirty hands on, they literally ruin. So they started going from being, we keep the records, to we now issue who can and cannot do it by license. And again, part of this had to do with race. You know, there was lots of people all over this country, and I don't care if you were Democrat or Republican, people on both sides. Back in the day, we're talking 60, 80, 100 plus years ago, people were racist, much more commonly. And there were people who didn't want blacks marrying whites or whites marrying blacks or people marrying Native Americans or vice versa. They wanted to kind of keep everyone segregated. That was a big part of it. And that was government controlled. And it was influenced because individuals work in the government and they bring their prejudices and their biases in with them. And that was part of the problem. And they took this control and they've held on to this control. We need to get the government out of the business of marrying people, period. Especially in our day and age. We live in 2020. In 2020, people can put up databases for anyone in the world to search. There is no reason why you can't have organizations who want to perform and recognize marriages and have those records available for everyone to see, right? Everyone has a computer they hold in their hand. Well, not everybody. In the United States, a majority of people have a computer with a phone app on it, if you will, in their hand, or they have a computer at home, or they have access to computers anywhere. Anyone and everyone can see these records very easily. Because of that, we need to get the government out of the business of licensing marriages. All right, so that was personal relationships. And again, it talks even on there, you know what? If you want two men to get married, two women, whoever it might be, as long as they're consenting adults, even multiple people, I think it even talks about, regardless of the number of participants. If you've got 3 people who want to be married, I wouldn't feel comfortable in that marriage, but if they do and they are all consenting adults, hence consenting, 2 key elements, they should be allowed to do it. All right, moving on. 1.5, this is going to be a hot topic for anybody just seeing the title, but that's okay because I think you'll be happy with the way it's written. So it says 1.5, abortion. I did say abortion. It says very short, very succinctly, recognizing that abortion is a sensitive issue and that people can hold good faith views on all sides, we believe that government should be kept out of the matter, leaving the question to each person for their conscientious consideration. So what's that saying? Is that the government should not be legalizing abortion. They should also not be criminalizing abortion. Abortion should be a decision between a person and a medical professional, right? It's saying that it's a sensitive issue and that people can have good faith views on abortion, either pro or either being pro-life or pro-choice on all sides. It doesn't matter. People have their own personal beliefs. Like I have my personal beliefs on abortion. You might have yours. My thoughts on it, my views on it shouldn't necessarily restrict you from fulfilling your views and your beliefs on abortion. Right? I mean, we live in a free country. We should be allowed to make these free decisions, per se. So I can kind of get behind that. Even though I'm not for abortion, I can get behind this because it's saying each person needs to decide for themselves. You know, to each it says the matter of leaving the question to each person for their conscientious consideration. It's up to them. It's up to them and their conscience. It's up to between them and their God, them and their family, them and their partner, whoever it might be. It's important that we focus on that. I know a lot of people out there who are pro-life will get mad and say, well, we can't ever have any abortions. I don't know if that's honestly a viable option, period. I mean, obviously there are a small portion, very small portion of people who have abortions for medical purposes. And it's real, they do. They have these things for it. Hello? Hello? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. Hopefully everyone's hearing me. Yeah, because I'm not having any type of signal coming through on one of my channels. Oh, well, anyways, sorry, didn't mean to get distracted. Hopefully everything is coming through loud and clear. If not, I apologize, and we can do this over. But yeah, so as far as the abortion topic goes, it is a very touchy subject. I get that. Most definitely. And it's just the way it is. Right? Right. Okay. So moving forward now, we're going to go to parental rights. It says 1.6, parental rights. Parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs, provided that the rights of the children to be free from abuse and neglect are also protected. Now, you might ask yourself, why would they bother putting in parental rights? It doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, everyone knows it's a no-brainer, but that's fine. But if you notice here, it says parents or other guardians, because let's face it, in today's day and age, many times it's not the parents who are raising these children. Sadly to say, I've known a number of people over the last 5 or 10 years where people in families, parents were having major issues, and other people in the family, through the foster system, mind you, would have to start raising these children because no one else is around to raise them. That's an issue, right? That being said, we have to put things in place, generalized, so people have rights. Not only the parents or the guardians, but the children as well. And that's why this was put in there. So now we jump to 1.7, crime and justice. Now this is going to be a little bit of a long-winded part, so bear with me. It says governments must force to be limited to the protection of the rights of individuals to life, liberty, and property, and governments must never be permitted to violate these rights. Laws should be limited in their application to violations of the rights of others through force or fraud, or be deliberate actions that place others involuntarily at significant risk of harm. Therefore, we favor the repeal of all laws creating crimes without victims, such as gambling, the use of drugs for medical or recreational purposes, and consensual transactions involving sexual services. We support restitution to the victim to the fullest degree possible at the expense of the criminal or the negligent wrongdoer. The constitutional right of the criminally accused, including due process, a speedy trial, legal counsel, trial by jury, and the legal presumption of innocence until proven guilty must be preserved. We assert the common law right of juries to judge not only the facts, but also the justice of the law. We oppose the prosecutorial practice of overcharging in criminal prosecutions so as to avoid jury trials by intimidating defendants into accepting plea bargains. Now, that was a mouthful, yes. But I agree with everything that was put in there. That was a very well thought out, well encompassing section of the platform for crimes and justice, or for crime and justice. Again, I wish we could spend an hour just on that. We probably could spend at least a half an hour just on that one section. But unfortunately, we're still in section 1 of 3 sections, so we should probably move along. Again, I recommend that you go over this yourself, that you either print out the PDF and you go over it. And maybe one day we will decide to go through this section by section, literally, and spend an hour on 2 or 3 of these points, or even one of these points. Maybe we'll do that in greater detail down the road. But I figured today we'll just go through it generally, go read through the entire thing. So now we're at 1.8. It says death penalty. We oppose the administration of the death penalty by the state. Period. That's it. There's no exceptions. I don't care if you're Charles Manson. I don't care if you're Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't care if you are the Unabomber. I don't care who you are. We oppose the administration of the death penalty by the state because the state should not be sanctioning murder. Period. That's it. It's just that simple. The state has proven itself to not only be fallible, but to be far from even imperfect. They have a terrible track record. In fact, there are studies that have been done that estimate at minimum, that 1 out of every 10 people on death row are innocent. That's the minimum, 10%. That means if you take that to its full truth, that means 1 out of every 10 people at minimum who have been executed were innocent. The government cannot be in charge of executing people and murdering people and taking lives because it's not their job. Just not. Now we can get into a huge discussion and argument about, or debate, I should say, not an argument, but a debate and discussion about the cost of executing someone versus life imprisonment, because if you actually read the studies, it's far cheaper, not cheaper, far cheaper, to simply house someone for the rest of their days, even if they live to be 100, than it is for execution. Not only that, how many times are we wrong? How many times have we been wrong? 10% of the time, 15, 20% of the time? How many times have people been railroaded and executed when they didn't deserve it? How many times is that okay with you? 1 time, 2 times, 100 times? Well, I can tell you right now, it's not okay with me, not 1 time, nor is it okay with anyone in the Libertarian Party. So moving forward. The last section is 1.9, section 1 is 1.9 called self-defense. Okay. The only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights, life, liberty, and justly acquired property against aggression. This right inheres in the individual who may agree to be aided by any other individual or group. We affirm the individual right recognized by the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms and oppose the prosecution of individuals for exercising their rights of self-defense. Private property owners should be free to establish their own conditions regarding the presence of personal defense weapons on their own property. We oppose all laws at any level of government restricting, registering, or monitoring the ownership, manufacture, or transfer of firearms or ammunition. Now, this is going to be something that right after you read that, it's either going to be like a hell yeah or a hell no response from you. And I get that. But there's a reason why they believe this. It's a reason why we believe this. It's very simple. We believe fully in the Second Amendment. We believe that the government has no right to tell me as a legal citizen what I can and can't do. Period. On my own property. It's my property. That being said, I would recommend you look into this a little further for you. If this statement bothers you, if section 1.9 bothers you, look into it further. Perhaps it might you might find some alleviation there at some point. Now we're going to jump into section 2.0 called economic liberty, which is about as long as the last one. So we're going to start at 37 minutes. So let's start moving along, maybe a little faster. So it says economic liberty. Libertarians want all members of society to have abundant opportunities to achieve economic success. Very important. Let me read that again. Libertarians want all members of society to have abundant opportunities to achieve economic success. A free and competitive market allocates resources in the most efficient manner. Each person has a right to offer goods and services to others on the free market. The only proper role of government in the economic realm is to protect property rights, adjunct disputes, and provide a legal framework in which voluntary trade is protected. All efforts by government to redistribute wealth or to control or manage trade are improper in a free society. Now, 2.1 is property and contract. As respect for property rights is fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society, it follows that the freedom to contract, to obtain, retain, profit from, manage, or dispose of one's property must also be upheld. Libertarians would free property owners from government restrictions on their rights to control and enjoy their property, as long as their choices do not harm or infringe on the rights of others. Eminent domain, civil asset forfeiture, governmental limits on profits, governmental product mandates, and governmental controls on prices of goods and services, including wages, rents, and interests, are abridgments of such fundamental rights. For voluntary dealings among private entities, parties should be free to choose with whom they trade and set whatever trade terms are mutually agreeable. Again, there is some gray area in there, and there's some areas where people can have a solid, good faith argument on, and I'd be more than happy to have that conversation because, I think that discussion needs to be had. But generally speaking, people should be free to make deals that they believe are right. So this is section 2.2, environment. Competitive free markets and property rights stimulate the technological innovations and behavioral changes required to protect our environment and ecosystems. Private landowners and conservation groups have a vested interest in maintaining natural resources. Governments are unaccountable for damage done to our environment and have a terrible track record when it comes to environmental protection. Protecting the environment requires a clear definition and enforcement of individual rights and responsibilities regarding resources like land, water, air, and wildlife. Where damages can be proven and qualified in a court of law, Restitution to the injured parties must be required. Now, a lot of people will say, well, if you allow this, you're going to remove all the regulations. People are allowed to go crazy and they're going to pollute our water. No, they're not, because I, as an individual, if I'm affected by some company dumping something in a river or poisoning the land, I can sue them. And if I can prove it, we can only stop them, but make sure that they pay for what they've done wrong. Section 2.3, energy and resources. While energy is needed to fuel a modern society, government should not be subsidizing any particular form of energy. We oppose all government control of energy pricing, allocation, and production. 2.4, government financing and spending. All persons are entitled to keep the fruits of their labor. We call for the repeal of the income tax and the abolishment of the Internal Revenue Service and all federal programs and services not required under the U.S. Constitution. We oppose any legal requirements forcing employers to serve as tax collectors. We support any initiative to reduce or abolish any tax and oppose any increase on any tax for any reason. To the extent possible, we advocate that all public services be funded in a voluntary manner. Now, this is a gray area again. This is something that I would say roughly 30-40% of libertarians are not for. I would say 50+% are, but they still want clarification, and they should get clarification. I think this is an area that they're actually working on right now, because it says, to the extent possible, we advocate that all public services be funded in a voluntary manner. How do you define public services? How do you define to the extent possible? Does that mean that we get rid of firemen and police? Probably not. But to some libertarians, they think that you should. Again, I recommend that you do your own research and you come up with your own mind on how you view government spending and finance. Now, 2.5, government debt. Government should not incur debt which burdens future generations without their consent. We support the passage of a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution, provided that the budget is balanced exclusively by cutting expenditures and not by raising taxes. Section 2.6, government employees. We favor repealing any requirement that one must join or pay dues to a union as a condition of government employment. We advocate replacing defined benefit pensions with defined contribution plans as are commonly offered in the private sector, so as to not to impose debts on future generations without their consent. 2.7, money and financial markets. We favor free market banking. With unrestricted competition among banks and depository institutions of all types. Markets are not actually free unless fraud is vigorously combated. Those who enjoy the possibility of profits must not impose risks of losses upon others, such as through government guarantees or bailouts. We support ending federal student loan guarantees and special treatment of student loan debt in bankruptcy proceedings. Individuals engaged in involuntary exchange should be free to use as money any mutually agreeable commodity or item. We support to halt the inflationary monetary policies and unconstitutional legal tender laws. Now, again, there's a lot there to unpack, and even I'm having trouble reading it, so I have to do some research there myself, but I highly recommend going to money and financial markets. 2.7. Now, 2.8 says marketplace freedom. Libertarians support free markets. We defend the right of individuals to form corporations, cooperatives, and other types of entities based on voluntary association. We oppose all forms of government subsidies and bailouts to business, labor, or any other special interest. Government should not compete with private enterprise. 2.9, licensing. Libertarians support the right of every person to earn an honest and peaceful living through free and voluntary exchange of goods and services. Accordingly, we oppose occupational and other licensing laws that infringe on this right or treat it as a state-granted privilege. We encourage certifications by voluntary associations of professionals. Basically, what it's saying is the state should not be involved in licensing barbers or even nurses or what have you, but there should be an organization, a professional organization of nurses who do their own certification, or tattoo artists, or, beauticians, you name it. 2.10, sex work. The Libertarian Party supports the decriminalization of prostitution. We assert the right of consenting adults to provide sexual services to clients for compensation, and the right of clients to purchase sexual services for consenting sex workers. Sorry, my mouth's already getting tired. 2.11, labor markets. Employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees are outside the scope of government, and these contracts should not be encumbered by government-mandated benefits or social engineering. We support the right of private employers and employees to choose whether or not to bargain with each other through a labor union. Bargaining should be free of government influence, such as a compulsory arbitration or imposing an obligation to bargain. Education, this is 2.12. Education is best provided by a free market, achieving greater quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity of choice. Recognizing that the education of children is a parental responsibility, we should restore authority to parents to determine the education of their children without interference from government. Parents should have control and responsibility for all funds experienced for their children's education, for their children's education. 2.13, healthcare. We favor a free market healthcare system. We recognize the freedom of individuals to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any, the level of health care they want, the care providers they want, the medicines and treatments they will use, and all other aspects of their medical care, including end-of-life decisions. People should be free to purchase health insurance across state lines. Last but not least in Section 2 is 2.14, retirement and income security. Retirement planning is the responsibility of the individual, not the government. Libertarians would phase out the current government-sponsored Social Security system and transition into a private voluntary system. The proper and most effective source of help for the poor is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. We believe members of society will become even more charitable, and civil society will be strengthened as government reduces its activity in this realm. Section 3, securing liberty. The protection of individual rights is the only proper purpose of government. Government is constitutionally limited so as to prevent the infringement of individual rights by the government itself. The principle of non-initiation of force should guide the relationship between governments. 3.1, national defense. We support the maintenance of a sufficient military to defend the United States against aggression. The United States should both avoid entangling alliances and abandon its attempts to act as policemen for the world. We oppose any form of compulsory national service. 3.2, internal security and individual rights. The defense of the country requires that we have adequate intelligence to detect and to counter threats to domestic security. This requirement must not, this requirement must not take priority over maintaining the civil liberties of our citizens. The Constitution and Bill of Rights shall not be suspended even during time of war. Intelligence agencies that legitimately seek to preserve the security of the nation must be subject to oversight and transparency. We oppose the government's use of secret classifications to keep from the public information that it should have, especially that which shows that the government has violated the law. We oppose the use of torture and other cruel and unusual punishments without exception. Section 3.3, international affairs. Okay. American foreign policy should seek an American foreign policy should seek an America at peace with the world. Our foreign policy should emphasize defense against attack from abroad and enhance the likelihood of peace by avoiding foreign entanglements. We would end the current U.S. government policy of foreign intervention, including military and economic aid. We recognize the right of all people to resist tyranny and defend themselves and their rights. We condemn the use of force, and especially the use of terrorism against the innocent, regardless of whether such acts are committed by governments or by political or revolutionary groups. 3.4, free trade and migration. We support the removal of government's impedance to free trade. Political freedom and escape from tyranny demands that individuals not be unnecessarily constrained by government in the crossing of political boundaries. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of human as well as financial capital across national borders. Now, again, this is a little bit of a gray area for most libertarians. There are some libertarians who say absolutely no interference, no borders. There's other ones that say, yes, we need a border. Some even say we need a wall. Some people say we should allow people to come and go, but we keep an eye on them. And if we have any reason not to let them in, we don't let them in. That sort of thing. All right. But again, it's an area that needs a deeper dive. 3.5, rights and discrimination. Oh, too far. Libertarians, hold on a second. Okay, libertarians embrace the concept that all people are born with certain inherent rights. We reject the idea that a natural right can ever impose an obligation upon others to fulfill that right. We condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant. Government should neither deny nor abridge any individual's human rights based upon sex, wealth, ethnicity, creed, age, national origin, personal habits, political preference, or sexual orientation. Members of private organizations retain their rights to set whatever standards of association they deem appropriate, and individuals are free to respond with ostracism, boycotts, and any other free market solutions. Section 3.6, representative government. We support election systems that are more representative of the electorate at the federal, state, and local levels. As private, voluntary groups, political parties should be free to establish their own rules for nomination procedures, primaries, and conventions. We call for an end to any tax-financed subsidies to candidate or parties and repeal of all laws which restrict voluntary financing election campaigns. We oppose laws that effectively exclude alternative candidates and parties, deny ballot access, gerrymander districts, or deny the voters their right to consider all legitimate alternatives. We advocate initiative, referendum, recall, and repeal when used as popular checks on government. Now, the last section of 3 is 3.7, self-determination. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of individual liberty, it is the right of the people to alter. Sorry, let me start that over. 3.7, self-determination. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of individual liberty, it is a right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to agree to such new governance as to them shall seem most likely to protect their liberty, as is actually kind of in our Declaration of Independence. But again, that'll have to be for a different day. Again, we're going to read section 4.0. It says omissions. It says our silence about any other particular government, law, regulation, ordinance, directive, edict, control, regulatory agency, activity, or machination should not be construed to imply approval, because we can't, of course, attack every single aspect of the government as it currently exists. We can't have a platform that's going to cover every single base that we want, right? It's impossible. So, now that we've gone over all of that, right? We have gone over the platform as is, verbatim, word for word. Now, again, I do apologize about my technical difficulties. I have no idea. I tested it all before I went live. No problem. But that's the beauty of doing things live, because as soon as you go live, nothing works. But that being said, some of the best stuff usually comes out being live as well. We have now gone over the platform. This will give you a snapshot of what it means to be a libertarian. Now, as you can see, there are areas that are kind of gray, and there are areas that you can maybe yourself would have some hesitation agreeing with. Well, I can guarantee you, you're not the only one. And you're not the only one who may be involved in the Libertarian Party who thinks those things. And because of that, they're always revisiting this platform. They're always looking to improve on it, clarify it, make better transparency. And some things that you do disagree with, there might be a good argument against your views. And by that, what I mean is, just because something seems like it might allow something you don't like, it might allow that because it wants to keep rights for the individuals. And just because it allows that right doesn't mean you'd have to act on it. Something else to keep in mind for libertarianism. There's a lot to be said for it, and there's some things to be said even potentially against it. But that being said, I suggest that if you haven't already, you can either look on the website itself and start clicking around and finding sections that might talk about candidates. You can actually look into real life libertarians and see how they're projecting themselves to the world around them, to their constituents, even elected officials. Yeah, go on Twitter or just even Google libertarian politicians Twitter and see what comes up and start following their feeds and seeing the things that they're saying, the things that they're doing and trying to enact when they're in actual office. You might be surprised how much you might agree with them. In fact, I think going forward, we might put a section. Again, I had my little light bulb moment. Maybe every week we will try to take a snapshot of a current libertarian candidate or even elected official, and we'll show you who they are, tell you where they're located. We'll only spend maybe like 5-10 minutes on it during each show, but we can do this, and then we'll kind of show you the things of how they act and the things that they say to give you a better idea of what a real world libertarian looks like, right? Because the beautiful thing about a political party, maybe conservatism or liberalism or libertarianism, is that they're based on theories, right? And theories are great, but theories have to be put into practice. So to put them into practice, you literally have to do these things and make them real world. And you have to make these applicable and applicable to the real world. And it's not always easy to do. And even if you have a certain, belief, that belief can take a different manifestation once you get into the real world. And I think it'd be great to do a little bit more of just a little section, like I said, 5-10 minutes, maybe at the end of each show going forward. We'll just pick one person who's either a current elected libertarian or one who's running for office. We might even talk about ones who are elected within the Libertarian Party, because there were a bunch of new people just elected recently in the last convention. So I think that would be a good place to start for next week, don't you? I do. Or not start, end, if you will, and add as a feature for every week. I have not decided what we're going to talk about next week, but we've kind of gone over generally very quickly, like last week, or actually technically the first 2 weeks, of what it means to be a libertarian. And then now today we went over the libertarian platform. So next week, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I guess we're going to have to figure it out, won't we? But I will post about it probably ahead of time once I've decided. And then, join us next week at noon, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, every Saturday here for the Libertarian Hour. And hopefully this will be an exciting journey for everybody, including myself, because I have a lot to learn, and I'm sure you do as well, because let's face it, there's a lot to learn in life, and things are always evolving. Things are always changing. So let's just try to keep on top of everything. And I'm also going to start having some guests on, probably maybe every other week at first. I don't want to over inundate the podcast with guests, but probably shoot for every other week, maybe even start with a guest next week. I don't know. We'll have to see if it all works out. Otherwise, it'll be the week after probably. But yeah, it's exciting times. I'm glad you're here. Let's enjoy this journey, and hopefully we all learn something, right? So to all of you, I hope you have a good rest of your day, a good weekend, and a whole good week. And we will see you next Saturday. And just so you're aware, in case you're not, I do another podcast as well, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's a half-an-hour show called The Daily Dirty 30, where I kind of just talk about my day and complain about all the things that are being bombarded at me and thrown at me throughout my day. And it's kind of entertaining. Some people seem to like it, so hopefully you'll be willing to check that out. But if not, either way, I hope you see you guys next Saturday. And until then, have a great day. Have a great week.